Aisha had learned long ago that life did not slow down for the poor. At 22, her hands were already rough from washing cups and boiling water and serving tea to impatient customers at the roadside stall where she worked from dawn until late night. Every rupee she earned went toward rent and her younger brother Sammy's school fees. Dreams were luxuries she couldn't afford. Survival was enough. That night, the rain came suddenly and violently. Wind rattled the tin roof of the stall as she hurried to stack plastic chairs and pulled down the faded shutter. Thunder cracked across the sky, and the street emptied within minutes. As she stepped into the rain to lock the side gate, she noticed a figure near the highway divider. An old man stood there, drenched, his expensive coat clinging to him. He looked out of place, not just because of his clothes, but because of the confusion in his eyes. Cars sped past him, splashing muddy water at his feet, yet he didn't move. Aisha hesitated only a second before running toward him. "Baba, are you okay?" He looked at her, as though waking from a dream. "Beta. I can't remember where I live." There was no phone in his pocket. No wallet. Just trembling hands and fear. Ignoring the storm and her own exhaustion, Aisha guided him to her small apartment. She gave him dry clothes, a warm blanket, and the last of the lentil soup she had saved. She had no idea that by opening her door, she had opened the path to a world far beyond her own. The next morning, Aisha woke to the sound of engines, not one or two, but many. Deep, powerful engines that didn't belong in her narrow, broken street. Curtains shifted across the neighborhood as people peeked outside. Children stopped playing. Shopkeepers froze mid-sentence. Black luxury vehicles lined the road like a silent parade. Men in tailored suits stepped out first. Their expressions were sharp, alert, dangerous. They scanned rooftops, doorways, windows. The air itself felt tense. Aisha's heart pounded as she stepped outside her apartment building. One of the men spoke into an earpiece, then moved aside. From the center car emerged a tall man in a dark suit. His presence alone silenced the whispers. His face was calm but cold, his eyes calculating. This was not an ordinary visitor. The old man behind her suddenly straightened. "Rayhan," he said warmly. The powerful stranger's expression cracked, just slightly. He rushed forward, gripping the old man's shoulders. Relief flickered across his face, raw and unhidden. "You disappeared," he said quietly. The neighborhood watched in stunned silence as the feared name traveled in hushed whispers. Rayhan Malik. The Mafia boss. Aisha's breath caught. Her mind raced through every story she had ever heard about him. Ruthless, untouchable, merciless. Rayhan turned toward her. For a moment, the world seemed to pause. Instead of anger, instead of suspicion, he lowered his head slightly. "Thank you," he said. Not a threat. Not a warning. Gratitude. And that single word changed everything. Life did not return to normal after that morning. Even though the black cars disappeared and the street slowly found its voice again, Aisha felt as if invisible eyes were always watching. She told herself it was only fear playing tricks on her mind. Powerful men did not linger in the lives of girls like her. But small changes began happening. The landlord who had been threatening eviction suddenly apologized and announced that her rent was paid for 6 months. Sammy's school called to inform her that a scholarship donor had covered his tuition for the year. The broken stove at the tea stall was replaced overnight with a brand new one, and a fresh coat of paint covered the rusted walls. Aisha stood in the middle of the stall one evening, staring at the improvements. She hadn't asked for this. She hadn't accepted money. Yet someone was helping her quietly. Across the city, in a glass-walled office high above the skyline, Rayhan Malik reviewed reports about her life. He saw the long hours she worked, the sacrifices she made, the way she refused reward when she could barely afford dinner. It unsettled him. In his world, kindness always had a price. But hers didn't. His father, Haji Karim, noticed the shift in his son. "Not everyone fears you," he said gently. "Some people simply choose to be good." Meanwhile, in darker corners of the underworld, whispers began spreading. The ruthless Mafia boss had taken an interest in someone. And in that world, interest was not just curiosity. It was weakness. The first sign of trouble came just before sunset. Aisha was serving her last customers when a group of masked men stormed toward the tea stall. Without a word, they overturned tables, smashed cups, and kicked the news stove to the ground. Customers ran. Sammy screamed from inside. "Stay out of things that don't belong to you," one of the men warned before they disappeared into a waiting car. Aisha stood frozen among the broken glass, her hands shaking. Not from fear for herself, but for her brother. Within an hour, unfamiliar vehicles appeared at both ends of the street. Armed guards positioned themselves discreetly nearby. She recognized the pattern now. This was no coincidence. That night, she marched straight to the towering office building where Rayhan Malik ruled his empire. Security tried to stop her, but a single order from upstairs allowed her in. She found him standing by a wide window overlooking the city. "I don't want this," she said firmly. "Your world is destroying mine." Rayhan turned slowly. His expression was calm, but tension lingered in his eyes. "My enemies are testing me," he admitted. "You are the easiest target." "Then let me go," she replied. Before he could answer, his phone rang. His face hardened as he listened. Farouk Qureshi had made his move. Minutes later, news arrived: an attempted kidnapping had failed. Haji Karim himself had intervened. And now, there was no hiding the truth. Aisha finally understood. The old man she helped wasn't just important. He was the heart of a dangerous empire. War did not begin with an announcement. It began with silence, the kind that presses against your chest before a storm breaks. Within days of the failed kidnapping, explosions echoed across warehouses tied to Rayhan's operations. Trucks were burned. Loyal men disappeared. The city's underworld had chosen sides. Aisha watched the transformation happen in real time. Rayhan, who had once spoken to her with restraint, became colder, sharper. His movements were calculated, his voice quieter but more dangerous. Meetings lasted until dawn. Armed convoys replaced discreet guards. Every decision carried the weight of retaliation. "This ends now," he told his inner circle. "No more warnings." Farouk Qureshi had escalated beyond intimidation. He wanted control, and he wanted to prove that Rayhan's one weakness could bring him down. One night, the inevitable happened. Aisha was taken. Blindfolded and driven to an abandoned factory, she refused to cry, refused to beg. When Farouk finally stood before her, he smiled coldly. "Let's see how much the great Rayhan Malik values kindness." The message was delivered. Instead of sending an army, Rayhan arrived alone. Unarmed. The confrontation was tense, suffocating. Guns were raised. Triggers trembled. But Farouk had underestimated one thing: Haji Karim's hidden alliances. Armed reinforcements surrounded the factory within minutes. The trap reversed in seconds. Gunfire erupted. When the smoke cleared, Farouk's reign was over. Rayhan stood wounded but alive. And as Aisha held his hand, she realized something undeniable: fear had faded. What remained was love, complicated and dangerous, but real. The city expected retaliation, not reform. After Farouk's fall, rumors spread that Rayhan Malik would tighten his grip, expand his territory, and rule with even greater fear. Instead, he disappeared from public view for weeks. No violent takeovers. No new threats. Just silence. Behind closed doors, he made a decision that shocked his entire organization. He stepped down. Control of the empire was handed to a council with strict conditions. Illegal operations would be dismantled gradually, businesses would transition into legitimate fronts, and bloodshed would no longer be the first solution. Many resisted, but none dared challenge him openly. His authority was still absolute, even in departure. Haji Karim supported him fully. "Power is easy to gain," he told his son. Peace is harder. Meanwhile, Aisha focused on rebuilding her own dream. With savings she had carefully accepted, clean money, verified and transparent. She opened a small family restaurant. Nothing extravagant. Just honest food, warm lights, and a place where people felt safe. Haji Karim often greeted customers at the door, smiling like an ordinary old man who had once been lost in the rain. One quiet evening, after closing time, Rayhan stood across from Aisha in the empty restaurant. I don't know how to live a simple life, he admitted. She reached for his hand. Then we'll learn. Outside, the city lights shimmered. No longer symbols of control or fear. For the first time, they represented possibility. And this time, the future wasn't built on power. It was built on choice.